making coffees and filing copy at another place. But because we're a small team, it just means I've been rocket launched into things a lot faster, and it's made me a better journalist for it, ultimately. Let's not go with weird, let's say an unusual path to journalism. Unique. So, I was a child actor.
Today's guest is Grace McIntosh, a broadcast journalist at Radio News Hub, whose journey into journalism is as inspiring as it is varied. From acting on CBBC's 4 O'Clock Club to voiceover work on CITV, Grace has the ability to combine performance, broadcasting and journalism in a way that's truly her own. She's presented on radio, created podcasts, reported on national and international news stories, and even worked on Channel 4's The Dog Academy. Alongside her career, she's been a presenter for Black History School and a development worker for Stop Hate UK, so she uses her platform to educate and empower whenever she gets the chance. And this episode is a part of our Black History Month series of How to Be a Journalist, where we spotlight black journalists who are reshaping the media landscape and carving out spaces for identity, representation, and truth. So, at the behest of all that I've just said, Grace, welcome to the How to Be a Journalist podcast. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me. What an introduction. Oh my gosh. I feel honoured with an intro like that. I don't know how to follow that up, but yeah, I'm good, thank you. Are you all right?
I'm doing all well. I try to flatter, but at the same time, I try to give you the shine that you deserve. So I feel like it's always, I like to start with like what's going on in your life, like at the moment right now. So your current role at Radio News Hub, tell us about it.
So I'm now almost a year and a half in to my role as a broadcast journalist working for Radio News Hub. We're based in the centre of Leeds, and we provide national news bulletins for over 400 stations, community stations, local radio stations, hospital radio, religious radio stations, you name it. We cover anything that other larger networks don't cover. Chances are they're getting their news bulletins from us. So yeah, it's very varied because we also cover some stations internationally. We have to produce Spain bulletins as well. We have a lot of stations out in Spain, expat stations and sort of more touristy radio stations out there. So we do a bit of Spanish news, speaking in English, of course, but we're looking at that. We do sport news bulletins, business news bulletins, showbiz bulletins. We do 2 radio programmes a day. So we do a lunchtime news programme, which is kind of a look at the morning's news and what's been going on overnight. And then we have an evening news programme looking at the whole of the day. They're 10 minutes each, and I think almost 200 stations take those, between 150 and 200 stations take those. That's cool because you almost get to be a little bit of a producer of your own 10-minute show. Piecing that together is always really fun. And we also have a Business Matters programme as well. But that's about to end shortly this month, but that's a 20-minute news programme for business news stories. So yeah, there's always new things going on at News Hub, and it's a really exciting place to work.
Yeah. So could you explain how the agency sort of format really works for anybody that doesn't know at home? So how you are able to report on stories in Spain, abroad, but how does it work? How does it get sent out? Just if you could give us a little bit of an explainer.
Yeah, of course. Our bulletins are slightly pre-recorded because obviously we are covering 400 stations, so we're not live. So we are having to source our stories ourselves. As a news team, we set the news agenda for what we think should be top of the bulletin, midway through the bulletin. A lot of the audio within our stories, we source the interviews for those. So unless it's the Prime Minister's questions and we're getting, clips from things like that. Lots of the interviews we do are independently, which is great because we can really take some onus on what we want to, where we want to position things in the bulletin. Sometimes we don't always go with what national other news organisations are leading on. Sometimes if we've done something really strong on a new, endometriosis medication or something amazing on, a food bank that's working to tackle child hunger or anything like that, we might go, no, do you know what, we're going to lead on that. So we have a real sense of, it's great because you have a real opportunity to set the news agenda. So we have somebody sourcing all of our audio on the reporter shift. That can also mean getting out of the office, out of the newsroom and going and doing boxes or going and doing interviews out and about. We've been all over this year, several different places outside court, some of the big court cases. We've been to the National Arboretum, I think that's how you say it, for the VE Day celebrations and things like that. So sometimes we have a reporters out and about. I've been out a few times at various different things. So so we source all our audio, put it all together in a bulletin, and then people on the reader shifts will go into the studio, read it, and then we have a dispatch system. So how that works is, we record a 2-minute and a 1-minute news bulletin every hour, and then we also do headlines as well at breakfast and drive time as well. So that's like a 30-second condensed bulletin of the key headlines. They get sent out to the hundreds of stations. So because that's the system, it's kind of hard to explain, but various stations will be set up in different ways.
That sounds pretty cool to me.
Yeah.
In terms of in the past, you've been working there for about a year and 3 months, a year and 4 months or so?
Yeah, about a year and 4 months now. Yeah, that sounds about right.
So tell me the one moment working at Radio News Hub that has really stuck with you, a story that you were able to tell that you're I'm very proud of the work I did on this. I did it justice.
Oh, so tricky. There's quite a few, but I think one that really sticks with me, because being from Yorkshire, and I'm from Wakefield personally, but a lot of my family grew up in Leeds. Live and grew up in Leeds, my dad included in that. So I really particularly enjoyed reporting on the Harehills riots last year. That was a pretty challenging day because it kind of happened overnight. I'd not sort of seen what had been going on, and then when I got into work, it was like, have you seen what's been happening in Harehills? I was like, what? So I had to immediately, when I came in that day, there was already a two-way interview set up with Talk TV. So I had to immediately go on and do that, reporting on what I knew so far about what had gone on. I hadn't actually been to Harehills yet. I was going to Harehills after that interview. So that was tricky, and I feel a little bit not disappointed in myself, because I think I did a good job, but I know it would have been a lot better had the day have been the other way around, if I'd have been able to go to the scene first, speak to people, find out a bit more about what had really been going on, speaking to the people involved, rather than using a lot of the, reports that we have coming in. I would have been able to offer a lot more to that interview, but it's just the way the day panned out. So I did that interview first, which was my first ever two-way live on TV. So that was quite nerve-wracking. But that's part of journalism, is just coping under pressure and getting out the information as accurately, providing as much context as you can. So that's what I did. And then I got in my car and went down to Harehills, and it was just amazing to see the community coming together. I think often in times like that, you hear and you see, all the negative bits, you see people setting fire to cars or whatever, and obviously this anger's come from somewhere. And, when you start drilling down into what has sparked all of this, what's been going on, and then the clean-up operation the next day, I was able to see people, people were filling up their wheelie bins with water to pour on, things that were still burning, and the next day, and people have been out sweeping glass off the streets and all of that. And a little boy came up to me and said, it's a shame I couldn't interview him, but he was a child, so I couldn't. But he came and told me that when there'd been an issue with a bus that had driven through the area, and the bus driver kind of had to run out of this bus because people were kind of bashing the bus. I'm not exactly sure what was going on, but this bus driver, for his own safety, he had to get off. Well, he left the cash, the little kind of cash tin that is in a bus with all the coins and things, and this little boy got on the bus, got it out, and ran back after the driver and said, here's don't forget that. And I thought, wow, what an amazing story. It's very quick, unfortunately, on a lot of news outlets to report on the thuggery and the negative things that happen in times like that, but then you don't hear those stories about the little heroes that do the nice things and are really great members of our society, and I thought to be able to speak to him and show that, yes, okay, there'd been some, criminal damage and all these negative things gone on, but in and amongst all of that, there were some really, standout superheroes and just generally nice people, and that's what I like to be able to show, So, yeah, that was a story I'm definitely proud of working on.
Yeah, I think a episode that I recorded a couple months back, also part of this Black History Month series with Rajoriya, and she
I met Hannah, she's great.
She's really good.
Yeah, she's fabulous. I love Hannah.
She's amazing. And she said something on a similar sort of vein, where she said that she was a very, very big believer in light and shade. Like, mainstream media does have this tendency to be able to really focus on the negative part of stories. And obviously, yeah, a really bad thing has happened. But the way that the communities come together to, sort their livelihoods out is always something that doesn't necessarily get the coverage that it deserves. So I very much do quite understand what you mean by and why that story was so important to you. So even prior to the recording of the episode as well, I did ask you a couple of questions about why coming onto a podcast like this would be important to you. And you did cite from being from the North and really trying to essentially carve out your career in the North, and that is still very much possible. So could you talk to me a little bit more about that and why, telling Black Northern stories and just Northern stories just in general is important to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so proud to be a Northerner, so proud to be from Yorkshire, and I do think the news is still quite London-centric. It is important to tell stories across the country because we've got people living across the country, and yeah, I'm just super proud that I have been able to carve a media career outside of London, and not that I haven't felt the gravitational pull to come to London, because I do love it here. Like, my mum's from London and I'm often in London, so I'm not an anti-Londoner at all, but I do think it's important that, your stories are being told by all kinds of different voices, all kinds of different people, really, because I just think that representation's important. There's still lots of stereotypes about Northerners, and the only way to dispel all of these things is to give them a voice to tell their stories in their own, in their own words, through their own, means, and having a journalist that's from that community, that understands that community, I hope helps them open up a little bit more and hopes it all feel a little bit more authentic and a little bit more real.
Do you think it's because obviously a lot of the headquarters are in London, so the BBC for the most part. Obviously the BBC is worldwide, but if there were more Northerners in London newsrooms, do you think that would make a difference? Because I guess they'd be there almost rallying for the stories, or if there was some change to really make sure the North gets the justice gets the coverage that it deserves. How would you propose that the industry thinks about and enacts change in that?
Yeah, I think it is still about just continuing to invest in local newsrooms across the country. I'm quite good friends with Shingy, who works at Sky.
Course,
Shingy, yeah. And he's now one of their northern correspondents. And the patch he has to cover on his own is wild. I don't know, that's just Sky, but I don't know if other newsrooms are similar or if they have, more resources. But I think, just more funding. I don't think moving regional journalists down to London would help. I just think London needs to provide enough, resources and funding and give the opportunities so that journalists don't have to move to London. They can stay and have successful and fulfilling careers where they're from, or not even where they're from, just in other areas. This includes Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland as well in this. I just think, I think it's nice to have journalists from that, not even just from that area, but living in and amongst those communities, helping to tell those stories. So I just think, continuing and improving the funding on local newsrooms.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Local newsrooms are definitely not nearly as strong as they were 20 years ago. And it's got a simple answer. It's most likely going to be funding.
Yeah.
If you pull funding, then it's going to make them suffer.
Because for all these journalists coming up, they feel they have to go to London to get work, and it shouldn't be like that. You should be able to get work, you know, in your little village in Norwich, or in, you know, up in York, or wherever you live, or wherever you want to live. You know, I think we should have more opportunities in not just print but in broadcast as well in those regions. But the more and more they sort of dwindle away, it becomes you got to go where the work is, and Manchester, London, a lot of the bigger cities are where people are moving to, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay, so now I want to segue into some more questions about Radio News Hub, but you covered a few stories, and well, you went and made a trip across the sea to the States.
Yes.
How was that? Tell us a little bit more about it in detail, and yeah, tell us your experience.
That would have been about 4 months into my time at Radio News Hub. And one thing I would say about News Hub, which I don't think I'd have got working at a bigger organisation, is the amount of opportunities. You know, we're a small team, and I could have spent this whole year and a half kind of making coffees and filing copy at another place. But because we're a small team, it just means I've been rocket launched into things a lot faster, and it's made me a better journalist for it, ultimately. And one of those things was going to America. So when the opportunity came up they wanted to send 2 reporters out to the US to cover the US election last year, the presidential race, which was arguably one of the biggest news stories of last year, not just here, globally. So to be able to cover that was just incredible. I threw my hand up and put my name in the hat, sort of things like, yeah, I'd love to do that. And it turned out that, yeah, me and my colleague Ellie were picked to go. A lot of planning and beforehand, obviously, because we have 0 contacts in America. So, yes, that was tricky, having to deal with the time zone difference. We were working much later to get emails out and speak to people out there about all the various things we wanted to cover. A lot of things on immigration, the economy, abortion rights, healthcare, a lot of things that we thought, right, these are the key kind of voter issues. And even that was tricky, like having to understand, we just had an election here, we just had the general election, so it was quite a crazy election year for me as my first year as a qualified journalist. We had the general election and then obviously the big US election. Having to try and understand what the key issues were for voters and the electorate, what were Americans thinking and feeling, like having to try and tap into that was a challenge, and a lot of research beforehand. And then, we flew out. I mean, the day we got there, we just got off our flight, we were jet lagged and tired, and we seen on our phones that Kamala Harris was doing a rally near the Washington Monument, and we were like, we're in Washington, we've got to go. Yeah. So we threw our stuff in, got straight back in on the metro, over to there, right by the White House, and we were speaking to people as they were sort of coming away from the rally. How do you feel? And it was interesting because obviously being in Washington, it's very blue, it's a Democrat-leaning state, so there was a real sense of she's our girl, she's going to win. Yeah, and it felt like, wow, okay, this could be a real history-making moment, the first ever female president, first ever black female president. Wow, what's going to happen here? And yeah, just amazing. And not only were we planning ahead for the election night, and we did an 8-hour live broadcast on that night for our stations, which was amazing to do that. So we were kind of like the US correspondents, and they had a whole show over at our studios in Leeds, and they were kind of coming to us a couple times an hour, which was really exciting. But we also were doing news bulletins from the US. So we were still doing our news bulletin shifts, but doing them from America, and kind of, live from Washington. From Washington, it's Grace McIntosh, and kind of giving the US news as well as staying up to date with, the UK news as well. So it was a real incredible experience. Yeah, it taught me so much.
Because I think something that's somewhat similar as well is that not being so close to to the actual story itself, and being a journalist that has, quite a lot of knowledge of UK media law. We know about, defamation and, trying not to be sued. But I think another one of the stories that you were able to cover was the Southport riots and the Southport attacks. A lot of people were up in arms about why is the press not reporting the name of Rajoriya at the time. But as journalists, we knew for a fact that, oh, okay, we cannot, because, I mean, he was 17 years old at the time.
Yeah.
And obviously he had an anonymity at the time, but people didn't necessarily know. So if we could segue to your reporting on the Southport attacks, and if you'd like to give us a little bit more of an explanation of that as somebody that actually reported on the story.
Yeah. So that was obviously just a really horrible thing to report on. Like, emotionally, I think all of us struggled. Like, that was the first time we were all like, wow, this is tricky, especially leading up to the court case, because, I mean, my colleague Liv was in court, and the stuff they were having to watch and hear was just awful. So it was a tricky one, but the strange thing, actually, about the Southport attack and news in general is, so I actually went 2 days after the attack to Southport. So the day before, the riots had happened, which was the day after the attack, So the actual story had almost shifted. And unfortunately, it was no longer about those 3 little girls that had lost their lives, and this horrible incident that had happened in that community. It was now about these, far-right riots that were going on, and they'd attacked a mosque in Southport, and that's actually where I ended up going to report from. So it wasn't, the conversations I were having were not really about who was it and why can't you tell us who it was. It was then, the next day, more about this community coming together. Like we said, that light and shade in stories. And again, I was there almost to be able to report on the light in this awful, awful time, because what I saw that day when I was in Southport was a community coming together saying, this is not us, these are not people from our community. Why would you want to wreck your own streets and your own neighbourhoods? These are people coming from outside and using this as an opportunity to project their racism and their being Islamophobic towards other people. And that was what was really nice, to just see that community. There was obviously still a lot of upset, a lot of anger, which is understandable, but instead of directing that, to harm others, it was being used to hold each other and help each other. And, I saw a local bakery coming down, giving cupcakes to everybody. I saw bricklayers, plasterers coming from whatever jobs they were doing that day to come and help rebuild the wall of this mosque. And that was incredible to see real community spirit in just such a horrendous time. Yeah,
no, most definitely. I do think that when you're reporting on stories like that are so personal and really saddening at times, it can be quite difficult. So do you ever find that you need to switch yourself off or unwind from it from time to time?
Yeah, it's a tricky thing, isn't it? Because you are having to read horrible stuff and sometimes see it, firsthand, and that's just part and parcel of the job. But yeah, I think you have to find a way to distance yourself slightly and almost don't overconsume it, because it can become too much. I think find that human emotion, and it's all right to feel sad about it, and it's all right to, but also channel that into, okay, I'm going to give my all to this report and tell it in the best way I can, and have that emotional sincerity as well. I think that's okay.
So now, I do want to talk a little bit about your time before delving into journalism.
Yeah.
So you've had quite an illustrious career before journalism. So you've almost had 2 careers. You've had the journalism, and then you've also had this other career. So could you tell the listeners back at home what you did before you got into this line of work?
Let's not go with weird, let's say an unusual path to journalism. Unique. So, I was a child actor. I was on a CBBC show called 4 O'Clock Club, which I did for 7 years, and they were some of the best times of my life. I loved acting, I loved filming, I just had some of the best memories working on that show. It was so much fun. So as a child, I was really into the performance side of things, and then being able to get an agent and have the opportunity to audition for TV shows is what led me to 4 O'Clock Club. And and I did some, like you said, some voiceover work in and amongst those 7 years, working for CITV, doing continuity, which I loved. And I think, again, those early voice training skills and learning how to use my voice and microphone etiquette and all that ended up really helping me further down the line. Now I work in radio as a journalist, so all these things, it's like compounding interest on my kind of life and career. All these things have added up and it's all worked out really. But so kind of was in acting and did some voice stuff as a child. And then when I got to the last maybe couple of years doing 4 O'Clock Club, I kind of found myself more and more inquisitive about what the producer was doing and like, what's that director doing? Why are you planning this? And asking a lot more questions about some of the more behind the scenes roles. And that's when I thought, maybe I also have an interest in that side of things as well. And then in order to explore that, I went and did a media and performance degree at Salford University. And that's what made me think, maybe I want to tell real stories. Yeah. You know, I made a documentary on my granddad because he used to do spinning classes. And he's 90, so, well, he was 90 at the time, he's 93 now. Yeah. So I was like, that's quite unique, my 90-year-old granddad going to these spinning classes. I think that makes for quite a good documentary. And loved it, and I was just like, I think I want to more go down the route where I, help tell people's stories, which led me to journalism. So then I was like, okay, well, I've just done a media and performance degree. I did no journalism module. So then I found News Associates. I say I found News Associates as though I stumbled on it. It's a bit more complicated now, but back when I was at college, I had a little time where I was thinking, could I do journalism? This is when I was deciding what I wanted to do at uni. So I actually did a week's work experience at Manchester News Associates. Okay. While I was in college. 17-year-old Grace was like, nah, I still like the TV side. I still like the, microphone. I like performance, and I liked that side, and radio, sorry. I liked that side all a bit more. So I decided not to pursue it. But then obviously, fast forward 3 years, and then at the end of my degree, when I was thinking, but I do want some journalism training, I was like, that place I did work experience at 3 years ago, they do journalism training, let me get in touch with them. So I spoke to Lucy at News Associates, and I sort of explained where I was at, and she was like, okay, come in for an interview. And I did my interview and started on the part-time course. So that then is where the paths between sort of acting and performance and then production and media then crossed over with journalism. Towards the end of the journalism course, the part-time course, sort of like the February-ish time, I thought, okay, let's now start applying for some jobs, because even though I hadn't finished, I was like, if I don't do it now and I wait until I do finish in June, I'll be up against all the graduates. So let's just get in a bit earlier, and that's when I saw the job at Radio News Hub and applied for it, and was fortunate enough to get the job. So that's how my wacky career journey has worked.
I very much get the performance to journalism pipeline is so, I'm not going to say it's the most well-traversed path in the world, but I do see how the skills are going to be extremely helpful. Like for the most part, like my broadcast, being on camera skills and all of that, like, yes, my journalism training did help out, like the broadcast element did help, but I think what also helped, maybe I'll say 5% less, but still significantly so, was like the music that I made and performing and doing open mics and that sort of thing kind of like prepared me for the speaking to a crowd, just being, quite public facing. And those skills are very, very, very handy. And see, something I had to say as well is that 4 O'Clock Club, when I was growing up, big watcher. Like me and one of my colleagues as well, we were both like, Grace McIntosh is coming in. I promised that I had to mention it. There's something about like the inner child, like within me that is just gassed right now.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
It's just the way that it happens right now.
Honestly, probably still, and will probably be for a lot of my career, the proudest I've ever been to do something like that. It's a career highlight. 4 O'Clock Club was a real, what's the word? It was like a first of its time, really. Really putting black voices and black working class voices from all across the country on a primetime TV show. Like, that's so exciting. And it was a real diverse cast, not just black, but white, Asian, a real mix. And I will always be so proud to be part of that. Like, my face beams whenever I talk about it. Not only is it the impact it had on so many kids across the country feeling seen, heard, or just thinking they're so cool, I want to be like them, or thinking, or I know someone a bit like that, and feeling, kind of validated. But it was so amazing for us as well, like just the experiences we had on set and what it did for all of our sense of belonging, identity, and on a career level as well. I mean, yeah, like getting to be on a show like that at 11 years old was just incredible. Like, I cannot credit that show enough for everything that's happened after it in my career. Like, it was just amazing.
Yeah, as you said, it had an effect on a lot of kids across the UK at the time. I just could picture like me and my next door neighbor who was like my age as well, and just seeing people that look like us on primetime TV, obviously rapping, making music, just the whole thing. But it also like spoke to working class stories as well. Like,
yes,
like that kid for example, in Ipswich or in Luton,
or
in towns that don't necessarily get like the shine that they should. A show like that, very much, you just had to be there.
You did. It is one of those things. Yeah. No, it's brilliant. Yeah, it was just, and we're here for Black History Month, and I think we have to give 4 O'Clock Club a lot of flowers for that, because it was a real. It still is. Like, people come to me still now, like, oh my gosh, that was my favourite show. I still watch the clips online. Like, it's a real prideful television show in, I think, children's TV in this country, and like, yeah, that's what it was all about priding ourselves. And I think, it really achieved what it set out to.
Yeah. The next question, which is more so about Black History Month and why, as black journalists coming into the industry, why is it so important for you, and what change do you think the industry needs to, enact for it to become a more, inclusive space?
I think a lot of my feelings towards this is it kind of coincides with class as well. It's not just race, but class as well. And I think what it's about is giving black people the opportunity to tell black stories that they think are important. I think so often, unfortunately, because newsrooms are predominantly white, there might be stories that, a black journalist thinks is important or is trying to pitch. Maybe it's something to do with hair care or something. And if other people within that newsroom, it doesn't impact their lives, or they don't understand it, maybe, it might just get marginalised. I don't think this happens all the time, but I think there is still a lot of that. So I think it's just important to continue to and expand on making sure our voices are seen and heard, and especially at the moment with, we've got real difficult times in our country with divisions, and I'm talking about immigration, I'm talking about the far right, and I think now more than ever it's important for us to be united and make sure that our voices are heard, they're not misrepresented, there's not misinformation around what's happened. And I think making sure that your newsrooms are diverse ensures that the story is told as accurately as possible with as much truth and authenticity behind it. And that's what we need right now. We need, collaboration, and we need unity. And I think you get that from, being able to hear from lots of different people, from lots of different backgrounds, rather than, unfortunately, misinterpreted information telling their story for them. Yeah. And I think that's a real struggle at the moment. I think it's now more than ever is just important for, working class, black, Asian, any ethnic minority, trans, gay, disabled, neurodiverse. I think we need a range of journalists in our industry to really champion and, tell the stories that impact their lives and impact their communities from being within that community. I think that's, and I also don't think that means that, because I don't want to think that only black journalists can tell black stories, trans journalists can tell. That's not the case at all. I think that, I think some crossover is always important, because then it shows that, we're all looking out for each other. Pushing on having diverse newsrooms will just mean that the news is only better that we're told, and that's all we can ask for, really.
Because it's not pigeonholing, black journalists into reporting on, let's say, for example, you're a black music journalist, it's not pigeonholing him into, like, reporting on Stormzy every single week.
No.
Not by any stretch of the imagination. And you want, like, for a person like Jon Snow, for example, when he goes into working class areas, even though he's not a working class man, he's able to report about, he's able to report with care.
Yeah.
And I think that's what is very much most important. And I did want to circle back to what you said about it being a classroom, because I do very much agree as well. Because when you think about the way that a place like, I can talk about my experience in the way that a place like Luton is reported on. Luton is very much a working class town, but has the reputation that it does. But I do find whenever you get somebody that's actually from Luton, regardless of what they look like, that actually understands how the town really is, you see it actually done with a little bit more care. But then I think when it's done by somebody from maybe like middle class or upper class coming into the town, they immediately come with a sort of bias. Like, we're here to report this story in this certain type of way. And I guess having those, I guess it's the way that the story is framed. Could you go a little bit more in depth about it and talk about your experience like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm constantly having to defend Wakefield from people saying, it's this or it's that. And I'm like, well, have you ever been, for starters? Or, or what makes you think that? And, I think, when you can only go off your own experiences of something. And I think just having more of those personal experiences attached to stories is what makes them really true and feel really authentic. Like you said, you're right, a black music journalist shouldn't only ever have to report on Stormzy. What they might know is about a steel band group that they went to as a kid, that, that's doing this amazing thing, or that's, it's those little nuances that you might know about because of who you are, because of your race, your class, your identity, ultimately. It does make us up, it does make up who we are, and it does shape our experiences and what we've seen, heard, and how we experience life. And I think just having more of that helps to just better tell stories with more nuance and more truth in it.
Obviously, I know for a fact that you very, very, very much used to being in a podcast sort of setup. So would you like to tell us a bit more about your podcast?
Yeah, I'd love to. So for a long time, I was procrastinating starting a podcast. It was an itch I wanted to scratch. I really, really wanted to get something off the ground. I did a pilot with a friend a few years ago. But then I was like, what am I always talking about with my friends? It's adulting. It's, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much this costs. I didn't realise I had to pay for this, Oh, I've got this thing coming off my paycheck, national insurance. Anyone know what that is? All these different things that I just think no one is ever told at school. We're just not told about these things. You really are learning on the go. My podcast idea really is about questioning some of these things that we have going on in our heads through our quarter life. So the name is Quarter Life Questions, and it's all about getting in people that have been there, done that, or experts in their field to answer our quarter life questions and dilemmas. I've done an episode on should I forgive my cheating partner in my 20s? Is it right to stay, or should I be moving on because I'm in my 20s and I'm young, or is this the love of my life? And or I've done things on mortgages, how to get a mortgage for starters. How do you know you can afford a mortgage? Is it accessible? A lot of young people are on minimum wage. Can you get a mortgage on minimum wage? Questions that we have all the time, and I think you can get the answer quite easily on ChatGPT or on like little bites from a TikTok video, but to really sit down, slow down, and go in depth. I like to break past that surface level answer. I like to know everything. That's the journalist within me, and to be able to get people on and really give some tangible, practical advice for other people in their 20s or even late teens that are starting to explore these these adulting questions as we're moving into adulthood, even though we don't feel like adults because we still feel like kids. This really weird time that we're living in a really weird climate because everything's so expensive, and, buying a house for our parents was something that was really easy, but it's not now. Having a job for life was really easy for our parents, but it's not now. So all these different things in the current society that we're living in is what it's all about, really. Loving doing it. It combines everything I love. It's got the journalism side. I love researching my topics and booking my interview guests. It's got the presenter side, because obviously I host it, and I love that. It's got the more technical side, because I have to edit it and do all the marketing and the analytics, and that's all the stuff that I learned doing a media degree. So it's just a bit of everything, and I'm really, really enjoying it.
The concept of adulting just in general it stresses people out. It stresses
stressful.
me out. So having a podcast that does it in such an entertaining manner is very, very, very nice to have. Now, I do want to follow up and play a game with you. So it's going to be called Would You Produce It?
Ooh, okay.
So your course of life questions is going to be the main part of the game.
Okay.
So if you had the opportunity to turn course of life questions into a 4-part Netflix documentary series, meaning you have unlimited budget, you've got the team that you need to make it essentially happen, what would those 4 episodes entail, and where would you even start?
Oh, wow. What a brilliant question. Oh my goodness. Well, this is the goal. I would love to eventually go back into telly. I've left TV. I'm in radio at the moment. I now do podcasts. I'm very in the audio space, but my heart and soul is in TV. That's what I learned. That's what I grew up on. That's what I consume the most of still, probably, even though I do listen to a lot of podcasts. So yeah, this is the dream. So I would love to, eventually go back into TV. And if I did, it would be factual. So it would be documentaries. So 4 episodes. I'm calling my questions right. I'm going to split them into 4 categories. I think we'd need one on money, and I think a good money episode would be about investing. I think that is something I wish I knew earlier. Genuinely speaking to people on my podcast, I'm like, I can't believe I haven't been doing this sooner, because of compound interest and how that works. Really drilling into what compound interest is, how it works. I feel like I'd even have a bit of a Blue Peter style little animation explaining things. A bit that goes back to my children's telly days. I'd love to speak to money experts, I think, that are kind of really well educated in this. Now an educator on it. So someone I had on my podcast this week actually was Lewis Crompton, and he's done trading, and I think that's a really interesting route to go down, the trading side of things and the property side of things as well, and see what some people have done in their 20s that's meant that they're investing for their future. So yeah, that would be one episode. Another episode, I would love to do a first-time buyer related episode, because I think there's so many things that happen or are involved in buying a house that you just have never ever been told about ever, or you don't know about. Maybe 3 or 4 people on that journey, and we kind of check in with them about where they're up to from that process of finding out if you can get a mortgage for starters, and doing all your mortgage in principle and all that, to viewing things, and then maybe follow the process of them all the way through to getting their keys, starting to renovate. Maybe they're renovating on a budget, because that's often what it's like if it's your first house. I'd love to do an episode on relationships, because I think that's a really important part of adulting and growing up. Your relationships, kind of unlucky in love, kind of someone that's been quite unlucky in love, helping them go on dates, maybe if they're kind of paired with a dating expert, just kind of give them tips, maybe Gogglebox style, maybe they're watching them date, and they can give them pointers and things to get better and better as it goes on. I don't know, and I think dating is interesting now as well with all the dating app world, so maybe focusing on actually getting back to meeting people in person and learning to, chat people up again, but in a respectful way that's not like it was in the 90s or whatever. The 4th episode could be on maybe travel. I think what's really interesting is a lot of my friends have done the great big gap year or, you know, or done that, or they've moved. I've got one friend that lives in Australia right now and she's moved somewhere else. So I'd love to do something exploring that. All of these people that are either turning their gap years into gap lives and just going and moving somewhere, or just focusing on that gap year and like maybe following a few people in there, you know, post uni or post college that have gone and decided to go and travel. Because so many people at the moment, I think my age, are going to Australia, that would make for a good episode about, you know, is life better down under kind of thing. Someone commission me, please. that was just off the top of my head. I feel like they could be fleshed out a lot more.
That's insane. Somebody needs to help you make this happen.
Please, someone. Yeah. But I'm glad you asked me because you've got me thinking now. That's food for thought.
Yeah, most definitely. I guess it's a natural progression of the podcast. We'll get to that
it will come. It will come, absolutely. And yeah, I'm throwing my all at it at the moment. I'm actually moving from next month. I'm actually moving to freelance. I'm stepping away from my full-time job at Radio News Hub to go freelance, mainly so I can really focus on the podcast. You know, it's really my passion. Yeah. And I've found that it's my passion and I want to be able to give even more time to it. So I kind of made that decision a few months ago to think, right, now's the time. I still live at home. I'm 23. I can take that risk right now. So so I'll still be working at Radio News Hub, which I'm really glad about because I love my team there and I love the job. But I'll be doing it, hopefully, here and there, freelancing and being able to just give a bit more time to the podcast. Yeah.
Okay. If you had advice that you could give to yourself when you were 17/18 years old, so you're just, you know, still working things out. Even myself, I'm still working things out now, but you're just about working things out. If you had any advice to give to yourself back then, knowing what you know now, what would you ask?
Oh, my 17-year-old self.
Yeah, let's go 17. We'll narrow it down.
Okay. I would tell my 17-year-old self, don't procrastinate. Get creating earlier. I wish I would have got on TikTok years before I did. I wish I'd have got this podcast going probably a year or two ago rather than sitting on the idea. I think I'd say to my 17-year-old self, just do it. If you don't like the, you know, if it's not quite perfect, or you're not sure on the name, or you don't really like the logo, you're not sure on the concept, just get creating something. I think, you know, we're creatives ultimately, and to keep doing that and to be doing that as soon as possible and getting ahead of the wave, ahead of the curve on things is only going to set yourself up better in the future. So that would be my advice. Just keep creating things. Don't sit on ideas for too long and wonder what if. Just do it and fake it till you make it a little bit. Do it first, worry about it afterwards, but just get going and do it. And that is my advice to my 17-year-old self, but it's also my advice to any new aspiring journalists out there. Like, it's never been easier to be a journalist. We have phones, you know, we have access to a camera, we have access to a microphone. Go out and vox.
Inaction and chasing perfectionism can be your greatest enemy.
Yeah.
Just make it happen.
Make it happen, absolutely. Comparison as well.
Oh,
I'm going to add that one in there. Comparison is the thief of joy. I really believe that. Focus on what you're doing and just keep getting better at it. Don't worry about what Joe Blogs is doing or how they've got way more followers or how they're further ahead than you. Just keep that focus on you and persevere. Like, just keep going with it and it will work out. It will, or if it doesn't work out, it will lead you to something that works out.
I'd like to head into the final section of the interview, which is the Fast and Furious section.
Oh.
You can answer them quick, or if you want to add a little more detail, feel free to do so. I'm easy.
Cool.
Okay, so the first one. Are you an extrovert or are you an introvert?
Extrovert, yeah, definitely. I'm an extrovert through and through. There's no more to add than that, I don't think.
Of course. Night owl or an early riser?
Ooh. Now I'm going to go with early riser. I'm finding I'm a lot more productive on a morning. I'm naturally someone who does stay up quite late, but when I need to do things, I'm more likely to do it by getting up an hour before work than staying awake an hour later because my brain's winding down. I want to sit and watch Married at First Sight UK, you know. Often on a lot of the early shifts, which starts at 4:30 4 in the morning.
Okay.
So when you can get up for a 3:30 alarm, you can become an early riser.
Who would your dream interview be if you haven't interviewed them already?
Oh my gosh, that is so tricky. I don't know the name of the person. There's 2 people, but I would love to interview the founders of Vinted.
Oh, Vinted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I just think it's an ingenious app I use all the time, and I think it's so clever that they've tackled so many different problems with one app, like making fashion more sustainable, helping it's great for the environment. It's really easy to use. It's great for the seller economy because it's dead easy to sell on there, but it's great for the buyer economy because it's really easy to buy. I think the platform's set out really well. I would love to find out more about how they created that app. And it's basically overtaken eBay, which was the big, place to buy and sell things. I don't know if it has overtaken it. Statistically, that was my opinion, but as a user experience, I think it's a better app than eBay, so I'd love to speak to them.
The thing is, Vinted I still use. I have the app downloaded on my phone, and I actively would pick up things. I actually got these loafers from Vinted.
Oh, nice, I like it.
So I'm just like, Vinted is great. Depop used to be
Depop's
similar, but now I'm just like, not really for me anymore.
No.
And eBay is like almost, it's a little bit of a relic.
Yeah?
So then next, favorite concert you have ever been to?
Probably when I went to see Lauryn Hill last year. She was on time, for starters. She's known for being late. And it was just music I grew up listening to. And her music just does something to me. Mm-hmm. That comes close to seeing Beyonce for the first time. I saw her with my mum in 2016, which was the week of my GCSEs. But I was still happy to go. I didn't have an exam the next day, but it was still the week of my GCSEs. But I was like, no, I want to see Beyonce. And that experience with my mum was really special as well. So, sorry, I gave you 2.
Killing Me Softly.
Yes.
Do What?
Yes, and it was with the Fugees as well.
With the Fugees as well?
Oh, yes, and Wycliffe was there. Yes, it was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible.
Like, the Fugees, Ready or Not.
Yeah.
That song is like very, like the music side of Plam, which is different guy. You're speaking to Plamedi right now. The musician, he cites that song for like all the music he's made. Yeah, that song, serious.
Yeah.
Really good on.
Incredible life. Can I ask you that question? I want to know what your answer is.
My best concert I've ever been to. There's been a few actually. The first thing that comes to mind is Little Sims.
Oh, but she's incredible.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It's crazy good. And then who else? You know a band called Jungle?
Yeah, of course.
Jungle.
Yeah.
Yes, they are insane.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine.
That was wild. So it's between Jungle and Little Sims.
Nice. Good choices.
Yeah.
I like those.
No, for sure. And then, okay, final few questions. TV show you're currently watching?
TV show I'm currently watching. I could say Married at First Sight UK because that is what I am watching. But what I'm loving, cannot get enough of, Beauty in Black on Netflix.
Oh, the Tyler Perry one?
Yes. Tyler Perry has never been so good. It is incredible.
Final question for you is one word to describe your career as of right now.
Oh my goodness. One word to describe my career right now. Evolving.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming onto the How to Be a Journalist podcast, Grace. It's been a really good episode. I've really very much enjoyed it. I really like the way that you were able to speak about your experience and just to let people know that the Black experience is very much not a monolith. There are no stories. It's very much a class thing as well. There are layers to this.
Lots of layers.
I actually feel like that's like probably one of the biggest takeaway that I have from you. And it seems like in all of your answers, there are layers to this. It's never going to be a simple answer. There's always more to the story. And it seems like you've lived your life and your career in pursuit of trying to find out what the deeper layer to every bit of your life is. So I think it's been a really cool episode.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed it, and it's been so cathartic as well to actually reflect on my career. You know, some of the questions about where do I see it going, and how would I pitch things as a TV concept. You've got me really thinking. So it's been amazing. Thank you for having me.
Well, I very much do try. So with that, I've been Plamedi Mbungu, and this is How to Be a Journalist.